Tuesday World Economic News, and we'll start with a tsunami. A tsunami, an economic disaster? Not necessarily. The natural disaster of a tsunami could actually provide a temporary boost to the global economy. Larry Summers, a former director of President Obama's Economic Council and former head of the World Bank, said rebuilding could temporarily boost the Japanese economy. Really, Larry? Just throwing temporary in there, temporarily, that's the smoke and mirrors that's going to throw us off the scent that your comment might actually be complete bollocks. Now, Bastiat wasn't completely right 150 years ago, maybe, but he posed a series of questions that somebody like Larry would have to answer at this stage. He added that the global economy is more resilient than most people think. So we're now to imagine that Larry Summers knows how resilient the global economy is, and he knows what most people think. Sorry, Larry. Another article gives us Tokyo. Bank of Japan Governor Masaaki Shirakawa said the central bank will provide huge amounts of liquidity to the banking system today, reinforcing the bank's determination to keep markets stable in the wake of the devastating earthquake. It's like one of those dolls, isn't it? You just press it and it goes, me pee my pants, me pee my pants. But it's a central bank, so it goes, I give liquidity, liquidity, I give liquidity, liquidity. What they've been doing for the last 20 years. I give liquidity, liquidity, liquidity. Suppose it's all they can do. Here's a nice big chart. Isn't it a monster? Long term, certainly is. Real growth in the US, GDP per capita. And you can see, just follow it up. There's the dark one at the bottom there is Great Depression, where it falls into the Great Depression. So you can see that goes down in quite a slide. And there was a strange hook down at the end of the Second World War. I didn't know that was there. But obviously ever since 1982, oil price shock and inflation was a bit of a kicker. But you can see this is only up to 2009. That hook at the end is where we are now. And it's not looking good because it's really not improved much since then. But it's an interesting chart, isn't it? Visualizing economics. She doesn't put up many charts, but they're really good to look at when she does. This is financial wealth distribution in 2007 United States of America. And again, this hasn't got any better, but it gives us an idea. Now, this is financial wealth distribution. I mean, it's not real stuff. It's only financial wealth. I mean, who wants it? But let's just see who's got it. The big grey slice on the right is the top 1%. They've got 42%, which is a happy little slice to have. 1% has 42% of the financial wealth. The bottom left wedge is the next 4%. So the top 5% have, well, it's nearly quarter to, so it's nearly 75%, probably 70%. And to finish off the top 10% is the next wedge. So take the two top left wedges out, and that's the top 10% have everything else. So the next 10%, so the top 80% have the next grey wedge. So all the grey wedges have gone to the top 20%, leaving the bottom 80% with the red wedge. Might work. This kind of next chart. This kind of inequality is rare, and the last time we saw this kind of wealth inequality divergence, we ended up with the Great Depression. Now, it's going to be different this time, obviously. It'll be the great something or other, but we don't know what it's going to be great. But you can see the interesting part of this chart for me is the 1942 to 1982, which is just flat along the bottom, middle class America, where one person could work and run a household and things like that. It worked for then. There's no reason it should work now, but it worked then, and it's been getting more and more twisted ever since. Daily Telegraph in the UK, high petrol prices, gas, means society is running on empty And it starts with fuel runouts rose 40%. That's just conking out on the road, according to breakdown service Green Flag. All part of a trend that's also seeing around 6 drive-offs a month from each of Britain's 9,000 filling stations. 6 drive-offs in 9,000 a month in 9,000 filling stations is an awful lot of people driving off without paying. And he describes it as that's the trick of returning the nozzle, and clunk, being overcome perhaps by amnesia fumes, and not simply not paying, driving off. Where have we got to here? They've also clocked rising cases of theft from underground diesel storage tanks, including 15 instances in the West Midlands alone, involving that well-known getaway car, a stolen tanker. Other figures show that average fill is down from 25 litres to below 20 litres, so people can only afford to put a small amount in, or they're keeping their tank topped up knowing that it's going to only get more expensive, something like that. While stories knock about of skint drivers paying for tiny amounts of fuel with bags of coins. That's pretty desperate. I'll throw in a chart here about oil. Oil's burden of GDP is nearing old highs, and this looks a bit like the wealth distribution chart. High at one end, low in the middle, and high again. And this is the percentage that we pay for oil as a percentage of GDP. It's a big spike up in 2008, dropped down, and it's on its way up again. And it's above that, what they think is a critical 5% line. Daily Telegraph, total German triumph as EU minnows are subjugated. This is by Ambrose Evans Pritchard, and it is a very good article. They've given him 5 or 6 extra paragraphs, so he hasn't had to do his normal crushing everything together and making it into a bad article. It's a nicely written article. These conditions are because they're going to have 2 meetings today. This month, they've had the first, and they've got to have the second meeting on the 24th of March, I think it is. These conditions are capitulation by 3 vulnerable states on core policies and partial loss of sovereignty for the rest of the Eurozone, he starts. For Greece, the terms are a fire sale. 50 billion euros worth of national assets must be sold within 4 years, which is a 10-fold increase from the original 5 billion that Premier George Papandreou thought he signed up to a year ago. 50 billion is an awful lot for a state like Greece, and to give that, show that, state holdings in Hellenic Post, Hellenic Railways, Athens Public Gas, the Piraeus Port Authority, Athens Airport, Thessalonica Water, and ATE Bank, to name a few, will not fetch any more than 15 billion. And what will happen next? Well, there won't be a next. They won't go any further, but they will have done what they're told, and that is all that this seems to be about. Later we get, in fact, this is the end of the article, but it really is following the link, worth reading the whole article if you're interested in Euro type things. Popular revolt is the dog that has not barked since the long slump began, and it really hasn't. You've seen riots on the television, but it hasn't really kicked off. This may just be a question of time. The pattern of the 1930s is that deep alienation starts in year 3 as austerity grinds on, and in this case tensions on the Eurozone periphery can only turn nastier as the ECB tightens monetary policy. And they're not doing that. More liquidity. There. Last paragraph. What is clear is that sovereign states are being forced to cut wages and dismantle parts of their welfare state under foreign diktat with a gun held to their heads. This will not be forgotten lightly. The character of the European project has changed utterly. And in a way, it's analogous, it's a macro example of what's happening with companies crushing wages, right-wingers getting in power and crushing union power, And this is a very similar thing. It's the dominant, the powerful, the rich crushing the poor. Ooh. Let's finish with this. Peak of discoveries in oil. And the peak discoveries were in the 1960s. Look at chart. Oil discovery since 1900. It steps up and up and up until the 1960s. And then why is it going down? This is what we've got to get into our heads and other people's heads. Why is it going down? Halved in the 1970s from the 60s. It isn't because, oh, well, we've found enough, no need to find any more. And then what have we got in the 1980s, 90s and 2000s? Pitiful amounts. Lower than in the 1910s. All the new technology, all the new brains, all the new desire for it, all the new money thrown at it. And what are they finding? Not enough. That's what they're finding. Bye.